Today I am going to show you how to make 5 different finishing salt recipes. The last one is my favorite, so stay tuned for that. We're gonna get started with an all-purpose seasoning salt recipe. We're going to take one of our small jars here and start with 2 tablespoons of salt. This is going to be a fine ground salt. You don't want coarse ground for this recipe, although we will use it in the next ones. Then we are going to add 2 teaspoons of white sugar. This really enhances the flavor. We're also going to add just a pinch of pepper, about a 1/4 teaspoon. Then we're going to add 1 teaspoon of paprika. This is for color and flavor, and you could use smoked or not. Then we're going to do 1/2 teaspoon of onion powder, 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder, and a 1/4 teaspoon of turmeric. We're going to put the lid back on and give it a good shake. Your seasoning salt is technically ready to use now. However, you could add a little bit of cornstarch to this if you're noticing that it's starting to stick and clump together. And that is recipe number 1. This next recipe is for garlic salt. So this one is a little bit different because it is parts. It's 1 part of garlic powder to 3 parts of salt. So we are going to do 2, 3 tablespoons of salt and then 1 tablespoon of garlic powder. This is so basic and straightforward, but it's so nice to have the ability to make garlic salt if you need to use it at any moment or for a recipe and you don't want to run to the store. This can also be made with homemade garlic powder, which will take it to the next level. If you want to see how to make garlic powder, you can click this link, and I'll also leave it in the description box below, but I showcase how to dehydrate your own garlic and onion powder, and that is the second recipe complete. For this next recipe, we're going to be making a basil salt. So we're going to take a mini food processor if you have one, and we are going to add 1/3 cup of coarse salt. This is pickling salt. That's what I had on hand. You just want it to be nice and coarse. Because I don't want huge batches today, we're just going to do the 1/8 cup. You could scale this up, scale it down to whatever works for you. Next, we are going to add 1/8 cup of fresh basil that has been washed, of course. I love the smell of basil, oh my gosh. And add that to your food processor. Now we're going to head over and I will show you how we grind this up. And now we are going to blitz it until it is thoroughly combined. And once it's the texture that you like, we're going to add 1/3 cup of fine salt. You can use sea salt. I'm using pink Himalayan today because that is what I have. And every once in a while, you want to scrape down the edges to make sure everything gets combined. It's looking great. This is exactly the texture that you want, kind of like a damp sand. And then we are going to spread it out on a baking tray. We want it spread out as much as we can. And then we're going to let this air dry out on the counter until it's no longer sticky, and then it is ready to use. This 4th recipe is going to be an onion salt. Just like the garlic salt, it is one of those staples that is so nice to have. Whenever a recipe calls for onion powder and salt, you can use this in place of. But again, it is 3 parts of salt. In this case, I'm doing 3 tablespoons. To 1 part of onion powder. This is the onion powder that I made, and it is amazing. If you have a spice grinder, you could definitely grind these together, but I do not. So we are just gonna give it a mix today. It's funny, once you start making your own seasoning mixes, you realize how incredibly easy they are, and you wonder why you ever bought them in the first place. And this fifth recipe, as I mentioned before, it is my favorite one of these because it is a Sriracha salt. This adds the best flavor to anything where you need a little heat and a little salt. It is perfect. So we're going to grab our Sriracha. You're also going to need a baking sheet with some parchment paper on there and a bowl for mixing. We are going to start with a 1/3 cup of salt into our bowl, and then we are going to add 1 tablespoon of Sriracha sauce. We're going to combine it until it is thoroughly mixed. It should look a little bit wet. And once it is fully combined, just like this, we're going to spread it onto a parchment-lined baking tray. Now we're going to take this and put it in the oven at 325 degrees for 5 to 7 minutes, but we're going to stir it every couple of minutes. Oh, it smells so good. Okay, give it a little mix. It's drying out really well. And back in it goes. Okay, it got a little bit brown, but that's okay. This is perfect, so we're gonna take it out. Now that the Sriracha salt is done, we're going to put it into one of these little jars. It's cooled down quite a bit, but I did burn mine a little bit. So make sure that you're keeping on top of it and checking often. I got distracted, but that's okay. It's still gonna taste amazing. And honestly, mistakes happen. So we're going to fold this up. That is the Sriracha salt. That looks amazing. I've given my basil salt a couple of hours of resting on the counter, and now it is time to put it into a jar. So similar to what we did with the Sriracha salt, just gonna take our parchment paper and pour it on in. I think this may be too much salt for my tiny little container, but we'll do our best. Now the last thing that we need to do with all of these is put on our baking tags. As usual, I will have a link in the description box below to the recipes for all of these videos, as well as the baking tags that you can print off for free and add to all of your salts. This is perfect for gifting, and it is also perfect for just keeping in your cabinet to keep track of all of the things that you do. We have done a lot of baking mixes, a lot of rice mixes and seasoning mixes. I have been loving it, so I hope you have as well. I wanted to also mention that I have an ebook coming out very soon. It should be right into the new year, and it will outline over 50 different dry mix recipes. I have got baking mixes, I've got rice mixes, I've got seasoning mixes and soup mixes. I've also got extracts and sugars, and you are not going to want to miss it. It is a good one. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you more than you know. Take care.